Welcome to Season 1, Episode 5 of Impact Effectively. And I've entitled this episode, How Am I Doing? Because my focus is on feedback. I'm Florence Madden. I'm a management development trainer, an NLP trainer and coach based in Cumbria in the north of England. I am also the co-author of a book called Everyday NLP and the author of a book called The Intention Impact Conundrum, on which this series of podcasts is based. Last week, I looked at the idea of how we are speaking about and to ourselves and entitled it, How Are You Buying Into You? Back in the very first podcast, I looked at the concept also of Johari window. How do we know the impact that we're having on other people? And talk then about the importance of being open to feedback and being willing to share our ideas and take the feedback on that. As a result of that feedback, we might well be making some change. So we need to feedback on an ongoing basis, literally, to see how we are doing. And as I say, that is the focus of this podcast. So having said all that, you could be tempted to think, well, if feedback is so good, why isn't everybody doing it all of the time? And you probably have an inkling why that is. For a lot of people, their experience of giving and receiving feedback is not necessarily a good one. For some people, the experience of receiving feedback becomes synonymous with criticism. And that's only part of the story. At the start of courses, start of the day of any of my courses, in fact, I let delegates know that at the end of the day, we are going to be giving feedback to one another. And that initially, by the looks on people's faces, is treated with a wee bit of concern because of that idea that, oh, does that mean I'm going to be criticised? Their actual experience of that exercise, when people have thought about the feedback that they want to give another delegate on a course, when they've thought about what they've liked and appreciated about that person's participation today, as well as what they might suggest they look at or do differently. When they have that feedback given in a thoughtful, balanced way, the reaction is really quite different. And people, to their great surprise, have a very enjoyable experience. So feedback given thoughtfully, feedback that is given in a balanced way, can really change someone's experience of feedback. And that is within our control. You may be thinking, though, that when we are on the receiving end of feedback, then that is something that we don't have control over. Or do we? So let's just look at how we receive feedback. Often when people are giving us feedback, particularly if it's something that may be deemed as critical, they are expecting from their experience argument or denial. And that expectation can often mean that people give that feedback in a blunt or even aggressive way. And that's not easy to be on the receiving end of. There's an African proverb that says, examine what is said and not who speaks. So I'm wondering how it would be then that instead of perhaps our natural reaction to be defensive when someone gives us critical feedback, perhaps in an unfair or even slightly aggressive way, if instead of reacting to that we choose to treat it with curiosity and respect, that we find out more about what has led the person to give us that feedback, and perhaps even asking them what they think we might do differently. And when we've done that, perhaps also directing their attention by asking them what they did like or what they did find useful. It's probably not what people are expecting. But when we treat someone's feedback with curiosity and respect, regardless of how they've given to us, I wonder how that affects the relationship in the moment and how that reflects on the relationship going forward. There's a lovely quote from Mahatma Gandhi who said, "You can't change how people treat you or what they say about you. All you can do is change how you react to it." And I believe when you change how you react to it, you will actually start to change how they give feedback going forward. Switching though to giving feedback, I think it's kind of important to think, well, when I'm giving somebody feedback, what am I looking to achieve there? I want to get a message across to them. I want them to accept it. Maybe I want them to discuss it. And usually I want them to act on it in some way. So, as I said earlier, it's worthwhile in that case to think how we give that feedback. And the things that I said earlier were important to give that feedback in a fair and a balanced way. And that is by telling people what it is that we think that they've done well as what we think they may need to change. And the balance of that is important. The writer and coach Nancy Klein quotes a ratio of 5-1, saying that when we're giving feedback to people, it's worthwhile thinking about how we give them 5 pieces of genuine, complimentary feedback to one thing that we think they need to do differently. In other words, we give people a credit balance to draw on. We give them some encouragement that enables them to work on that one thing. And when we give feedback like that to someone on an ongoing basis, I think that has a huge effect on them and on the relationship. And it makes it easier for that person to accept that feedback. And how we give feedback to other people becomes a habit. In a previous life, I remember an incident around giving and receiving feedback. I'll change the names to protect the innocent. But we had a new line manager whom I'll call Kate, and a colleague of mine whom I'll call William. And William and I had what you might call a spat in a department meeting in front of our new manager. And after that meeting, I spoke to Kate, quite incensed by whatever William had said to me, and said, "Did you hear what he said to me?" And she said, "Yeah." And I said, "Are you going to talk to William about it?" And she said, "No." "Are you going to give him some feedback?" And I was quite taken aback by that, but very quickly saw the logic of it. So William and I did have an exchange of feedback, and we got better at giving each other feedback. But as a result of, I think, largely Kate's leadership and her encouragement of us to behave like adults and to give each other balanced feedback, not just what we weren't happy about, but also to give each other encouragement and praise and appreciation. That transformed that team of people. It became our habit. And I am delighted to say that decades later, we are still in touch with one another, including William and myself. So I want to finish today on a piece of feedback, on a quote rather, from Bill Gates, suppose it is feedback, really. We all need people who will give us feedback. That's how we improve. And I guess he should know. So think about how we make it easy for other people to give us feedback and to give us useful feedback, as well as how we make it easy for other people to receive our feedback. So thank you for watching or listening to this podcast. If you're curious to find out more about my other podcasts, my books, the courses that I run, including the Personal Effectiveness at Work course, on which the book and this series of podcasts is based, you can find all that out on my website, www.florencemadden.co.uk, as well as how to get in contact with me. So I hope you'll join me next week, because the title of next week's podcast is What Am I Saying? Again, starting to become much more aware of the language that we use. For now, thank you, and bye for now.